Hi, everyone. It's Alex Savage from KTVU, Fox 2 News here in the San Francisco Bay Area. And we want to delve into some of the latest headlines surrounding the coronavirus outbreak here in the US and around the world. And to do that, I want to bring in Dr. Rashid Chotani, who is a public health physician and infectious disease epidemiologist. Dr. Chotani, it's always good to have you on here to weigh in on some of these topics here. Let me start with what we are seeing unfold all across the country right now. People are taking to the streets in huge numbers, protesting the killing of George Floyd in Minneapolis, calling for justice in this country. But at the same time, I know there are a lot of health experts who have raised concerns about these protests potentially leading to an increase in coronavirus cases. How worried are you about that possibility?
Well, first of all, let me say that my heart goes out to the family and friends and everybody that's out there for Mr. Floyd. What a tragedy! What a tragedy! And we've seen such tragedies in our nation for a long time. And we have to do something about it. We've got to heal this thing. We've got to all work together as citizens of this nation. So starting with that, the protests, are things that our Constitution allows us to do. So we can go out and protest. That's not something that is new or unusual. But what has happened is that this has happened during the COVID crisis, and when we were getting to a point where our numbers were going down across the nation, and in many states we saw the decline, and we started easing the restrictions and shelter at home, etc. First of all, everybody, there are multiple factors that you've got to think about. First of all, when we had all the shelter in place, people were locked up at their homes. They were getting really antsy. They wanted to get out. That's number one. Number two, we had a huge problem with unemployment in our nation. Fortunately, our numbers came back today, which are much better than expected. And I hope that we are moving in the right direction so that the unemployment problem goes away. But we are still in what we call a recession. So a lot of people are worried about that. And all of these things play into this thing. And then this tragedy happened, and Mr. Floyd we lost a life, and we lost a life which was actually recorded, and the entire nation and the entire world saw it. So the reaction is not just in the United States at this point; it is across the globe. But in the U.S., with all the things going on, for example, we are, you are in California right now, and what you're seeing are after the opening of the state and certain counties, although the counties have opened at different levels, and California has perhaps been one of the best in terms of putting these plans together, how to reopen the economy and reopen the state and the counties. The numbers in some counties are going up. Not just that, when I see things like 60,000 people marching towards the city hall in Houston, I get extremely worried about multiple things. The most important thing for me, and the thing that I am fighting for, is to save lives. As a medical professional, as a public health professional, and as an epidemiologist, I'm looking at the data. And when I see all the people out there in close proximity, not all of them wearing a mask, I get worried that the disease is going to propagate again. Now, on top of that, when there are these standoffs between law enforcement and the protesters, and there's yelling and screaming. Yes, the virus propagates. I mean, spreads in a virus has an opportunity to spread in a much better and efficient way.
Right.
And then if there's tear gas or something, pepper spray, then people are going to cough, and they'll take off their mask and they'll cough. And once they cough or sneeze or something like that, the virus disseminates again. So you're talking about a virus that is still here. It has not gone anywhere. The virus has not left us. It is staying here. But with all the things that are going on, it has an opportunity to spread wide and cause more damage than it has already, unfortunately.
Doctor, what would be your best advice for people who are going to take part in these demonstrations, for law enforcement who are going to be trying to keep the peace at these demonstrations in some cases? What is your best advice to everyone who is involved here to try to keep themselves safe, keeping in mind what you just said, that coronavirus is still with us?
Yes. So the first thing that I want to say is that not every protester is violent, and not every law enforcement officer is racist. We have exceptions, and those exceptions are what is causing us all the problem. We've got to, people have the right, as I said, constitutional right to protest. So they should protest if they feel, and if I feel that something is not right, I have the constitutional right to go out and say, change this thing, reform this thing, put new laws in so that this never happens again. So I have no problem with that. If you want to do that, first of all, the protesters, let's talk about them. They've got to make sure that they're wearing a mask. They've got to make sure that if they're in a group, they are not mixing with another group, and they're keeping some social distancing if they can. Make sure that you're taking hand sanitizer with you so that you are actually using that. Wear goggles, make sure that your eyes are protected also. For the law enforcement, and wear gloves if you can.
Okay.
Because those are the basic precautionary things that you can use, right? Those are the basic precautions that you can take. For the law enforcement, I'm worried about them also, because they are out in huge numbers, and the most amazing thing that people don't realize is that the law enforcement officers are out there because they've been told to be out there. It's their duty, and some of them might not even want to. They might want to be part of the protest, but part of their job is to keep law and order in place, and that is their duty in the nation. So they're out there, and I don't think we should be upset at them for being there. We should make sure that they're also not at risk in any regard. They should be wearing the mask. They should have face shields if possible. They should have gloves. They should be provided with hand sanitizers if they don't have gloves. So all of those things are critical, because the protest is going to go. Protests are going to happen. Whether we like them or not. That's something that has started, that has escalated, and those are things that are happening. But we've got to be cautious and precautious, and just take common sense, precautions, and talk about things that are really critical. And let's do the protest in a peaceful way. So the police officers are also, or law enforcement is also, it doesn't have to come too close to you. You are doing your job, they're doing their job. The message is getting out there, and the message has to be for reforms, right? And the message has to be change some of these laws and put some new, checks and balances, so something like this never ever happens again. So that is what is needed, and then you have to talk to your legislators about it and make sure that they see that.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, good advice for folks in this country who are taking action right now. Let me shift things, Doctor. Beyond our borders here in the U.S. and there, one of the big headlines around the world is that coronavirus. We initially saw it explode in Europe. We saw obviously a big surge in cases here in the U.S. Now we are seeing a huge increase in cases in places like the Middle East, in Africa, in South America, in South Asia. Why are we now seeing this shift away from outbreaks in Western countries? What exactly is going on?
So each country, so as in the United States, each state had a different epidemic curve. Each state, went to a threshold in terms of the highest number of cases at some point, and the cases started going down. Just look at New York, right? So New York, the numbers are going really, really down. On the other hand, there are, California, Texas, for example, the numbers are going up again. So there are multiple things that are involved in this. So epidemic starts, as I said, the virus is here, the epidemic is going to start, and it's going to go up as it wishes and as it desires, depending upon how easily it can propagate, how easily it can disseminate. It's a very infectious virus. contagious virus, so it will do its job. That's what the virus is here for. In Asia, in Southeast Asia, in South America, and Middle East, one of the things, and Africa, one of the things that everybody was saying, because initially they did not see a huge surge in the number of cases, and the first reason for that is that they did not, and most of those countries do not have a very stringent or strong surveillance system, like what we have in the United States or in Europe, which is unfortunate. They're building those systems, but the public health capacity and capability is diminished over there, or is not as good as other countries. So initially, they did not see a lot of cases. There were deaths, but they were not able to identify them. But then they were saying that perhaps there is some immunity in those populations that is protecting them against the virus. And one of the theories was that because they have been exposed to the vaccine, the BCG vaccine that's used for tuberculosis, and because they are exposed to so many viruses across in their life, that they might have developed more, their immune system might be stronger. And I kept submitting to them that that's not the case. You will see the disease, unfortunately. It will come and hit you. So a lot of these countries did lockdowns, and it was very good. And what happened was that most of these countries, a lot of these countries, because of the economics of those countries, because of the, because how strong the economy is, people, poverty, etc., they had to make a decision at some point to reopen. And they reopened. And they reopened in Middle East and in some parts of Asia. They reopened at a time where Ramadan, in Muslim countries specifically, Ramadan was ending. And they opened up a few days before it end, which is a 1 month of fasting month for Muslims. And then Eid, which is the big celebration, or like Christmas that happens, is a 3-day festival. So everything opened up. People were just going crazy at home. They went out shopping, eating, doing whatever and there was no serious protection. And all of a sudden, 2 weeks after that, the numbers have started surging in a big way, and they will continue to grow, unfortunately, because there's nothing we can do. There's no vaccine, there's no there's no drug, meaning a cure or a prophylactic.
Doctor, what does this mean when we start to see these huge outbreaks in countries with very large populations in other parts of the world? Does that guarantee that it's all going to sort of swing back in our direction here in the U.S. and we will see this second wave that we've been hearing about?
So we will see the second wave, irrespective of what happens in those countries. But yes, the world is a small place in terms of how we move from one point to another, and how migration happens, how people come and do business, etc. And the work space is not the same as it used to be 100 years ago. So yes, anything that happens in a country like India, for example, which has a lot of number of cases, or Brazil, for example, it is going to affect the United States of America, because the disease, once it starts going up again, it will go up, and then with all the things that are going on in the United States with the protests. By the way, let's not forget that there are protests going on in Europe also, and I fear that some of those numbers that have gone down tremendously, and everybody's feeling comfortable, it is going to be a problem again for them, because the second wave is going to come back. One of the initial theories about this virus was that, listen, it's not going to cause any problem during summer months.
Right.
Forget about that. That's not happening. And we should have learned. We learned that when one of my favorite actors, Tom Hanks, and his wife were in Australia, and they got the disease, and it was summer over there.
And that was summer.
It's not something that protects us, right?
That's a great point. That's a really good point. Let's talk, Doctor, about some of the treatments, the possibility of a vaccine, and how far off that is. But I want to start with this drug that a lot of people have talked about. Obviously, President Trump has touted hydroxychloroquine, even saying that he is taking it to ward off COVID-19. There was a study that it that this particular anti-malaria drug led to an increase in deaths in patients. That study now is being walked back. What exactly is going on?
So this is just a tragedy again, in my opinion. You know, the ethics, medical ethics, the honor system has been hurt like you won't believe it. A company that came out of nowhere suggested that it had the largest database of all the studies that were being done. And actually, there are two different drugs that they looked at. One was remdesivir, uh, hydroxychloroquine, and the other one was ivermectin, which is another drug that a lot of countries put on as treatment regime for and started using it. So they looked at all of that. They were saying that they had the data, but now it has come to light that they actually did not have all the data. They did not have the right data, and they did not have the right analysis done on that data. And the people that were doing the analysis were not experts in the field, and they put things together in a very small company, which really did not. If you go and look for the company, you just can't find anything serious about it. And then you had people from Harvard, people from other major institutions that communicated with them without knowing that they might, what they were getting into, and they got data that was just not right. So the studies that were done specifically for hydroxychloroquine, and the studies that suggested that you were getting more heart attacks, that data was retracted from Lancet and I believe New England Journal of Medicine or JAMA, one of the two major journals just retracted and have taken those studies out of those publications because there is some serious ethical issues regarding the analysis and supply of that data to the researchers at Harvard and other institutions.
All right. So what should we take away from the fact that this study now is being walked back? I mean, in essence, we don't really know about the safety of this drug. I mean, this study suggested that it was dangerous and would cause harm, but now that's not necessarily the case. But does that mean that you would recommend people take it?
So right now, let's try to be very logical about it, and let's try to be very safe about what we can do. Right? We understand and appreciate what we have. We understand and appreciate that we don't really have an FDA-approved therapeutic or drug, which is a cure. We don't have a vaccine, which is a prophylactic. So we can use the other precautionary measures that we do, and the states have to institute testing, tracking, tracing, and tracking, and those are the elements that are available and we can apply. Now, as far as hydroxychloroquine is concerned, the studies that were stopped. By the way, the studies were stopped because of this these papers that were published.
Yes, that's a good point.
So those studies have restarted again because the enrollment was already there. So now the researchers are going to go back and take a look at if there was efficacy, if they saw some benefit to it, or if they saw anything that was harmful because of that drug. We don't know at all if there was the case. Now, there's another study that is going to take a look, and that study was also halted, was to take a look at hydroxychloroquine and zithromycin, another antibiotic that was used. And they're going to start because they already have the enrolled patients, and they're going to start processing and taking a look at it again. And there's going to be a serious audit done on all of that data. And once the data comes out, we will know for sure what is the benefit of any of these drugs. Now, by the way, both of those drugs, we know that they cause some problems. There are side effects, and every drug has a side effect, by the way. And you probably, as well as the audience, probably sees these drug ads, and they go, "Oh my God, this does this," and then there's
they
this
take a whole minute to tell you, list off the side effects. Yeah,
exactly, right. So, exactly. So everything has a side effect, but these two drugs have been approved for use in humans by the FDA for other elements, right?
Right.
So that means that so when you do that, what you look at is the safety, and you look at the risk benefit analysis, right? You say that, okay, there are some people who might get some side effects from this disease. Some of it could be life threatening, but in circumstances where you are going to lose an individual, let's try to use something, right? So let's wait for the studies to come out, because I think the audit is going to happen very quickly now. Not just because of the president, what he had said, but because right now the medical community and the big giants in the medical community are just just looking at it and going, we got to make sure what we say is true, right? We can't sit in these ivory towers and just go, oh,
Right.
we don't know. We have to be absolutely sure. So
Yeah.
let's be sure what we are going to be doing, right?
Yeah, and things are just moving at warp speed here. I mean, that's, you have just this research is happening on the fly, trying to figure out what's effective and what's not in terms of treatments here. It's just I'm sure it's just quite a time for folks like yourself in the medical community, trying to keep up with it all. Let's wrap up here, doctor, and talk about what everyone is really hoping for here sometime in the near future, and that would be a vaccine for coronavirus. We know there are a number of companies here in the U.S. and elsewhere working on a vaccine. President Trump did just say today that he believes we'll have a vaccine approved for use here in the U.S. by the end of this year. Does that sound realistic? Uh-oh. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes, I'm so sorry. Yeah, I couldn't hear you for a second. Yeah.
Oh, okay. We froze up. Did you hear my question? So
No.
the president said he believes that we'll have a vaccine available for use here in this country by the end of the year. Does that sound realistic to you?
So, as I've I've alluded to, I've written about it that it takes a very long period of time to develop a vaccine and making sure that it's safe and efficacious. I believe that so the president and the nation is taking a huge risk in terms of, and monetary risk as well as other risks, to start this process warp speed. We will have the vials. The manufacturing becomes a serious problem. So what the risk that we are taking is that we are testing the vaccine and doing the clinical trials. At the same time, we are manufacturing the vaccine, not knowing if that vaccine is going to be really efficacious or safe. So there are multiple studies that are going on right now. There are about 10 top contenders at this particular point. And about 6 of them, 5 of them are US based, some of them are UK based, some of them are China based. So let's see what happens. China is way ahead of us because they started a lot earlier than us. But I believe that we can have a vaccine. But let's be very cautious in terms of making those promises, because we don't want people to be thinking that, okay, let's live the way we are living right now. We'll take some risk, but in a few months we'll have a vaccine. But one of the things that I would, from a public health perspective, that I would like to say is that, listen, let's be very careful. Let's do everything. Let's open our economy. Let's do everything that we want to do, but let's do it with caution. Whether it's going to work, whether it's taking part in a protest, whatever you want to do it with caution, and you will be okay. But just don't feel that a magic bullet is going to come and cure everything. I hope it happens. The nation is spending a ton of money, a ton of resources. Some of the top minds in the nation are working on it across the world, by the way. So we hope that we get to that point, but that should not be something that we're going to live with till we get to that point. In the meantime, we've got to do all the other things that we've talked about.
Yeah, we are still living with this virus. We still have to take those precautions. I think that's a great message to end on. Dr. Rashid Chotani, public health physician and infectious disease epidemiologist, really appreciate your time, your thoughts, your insight. It's been a pleasure. I'll let our audience know here that you can find more information up at our website. It's coronavirusnow.com. I'm Alex Savage from KTVU Fox 2 News in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I'll talk to you next time.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you, Doctor.